Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Well, pretty much exactly what you'd expect from out-of-their-mind wacko leftists. Let me ask you guys this question, I mean you're experts at this point. If you're a far-left, progressive Democrat, and during a moment of crisis, you come out with a take that is so absolutely dumb and absurd and partisan, and then you get ratioed and criticized basically across the board, how do you react? Well, of course you guys know exactly what the answer is. You double down. You don't take a moment to step back and think, you know, maybe I shouldn't act like an objective crazy person and push this nonsensical rhetoric. Maybe I should be better. Of course not. If you did ask yourself those questions, then you probably wouldn't be a leftist. If you had the ability to be introspective, self-critical, or if you had any critical thought ability whatsoever, then you probably wouldn't be a leftist. And so obviously you guys know exactly what I'm referencing. Cenk tweet from the other day where he claimed that all Republicans love Vladimir Putin because he's a white male authoritarian leader in their continued attacks on Tucker Carlson. Well, TYT of course doubled down. Let me show you guys exactly what they said. Let's talk about why of course it's stupid. Let me continue to prove to you why they are not serious political players. In the realm of political commentary and analysis, TYT essentially represents the kids table. But of course, before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We are still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. With that out of the way, let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so we have geopolitical turmoil. It's been pretty tough for me to wrap my head around it. I've been spending a whole lot of time trying to figure out what's going on here, trying to give you guys relevant information, trying to analyze what this administration has done, what they're doing, and why it's been an utter failure. Like most normal people focused on the actual task at hand in the current administration that's currently leading foreign policy. Well, what is TYT doing? TYT continues to go on a tirade about why Tucker Carlson and Republicans are so deeply racist.
Putin's never called me a racist. Now, why did he write that down? Why did he want to send that message? He's saying, remember, the Democrats are the bad guys because they're not the same race as us. And they call us racist and it makes us uncomfortable just because we don't want them to be equal to us. On the other hand, Putin has never called us racist and he doesn't mind us being in charge. He knows how to take charge. And then you go to Steve Bannon and Eric Prince, they're like, Putin knows who to target. He's not gonna let any gay people get away with anything or even allow them to be, and he's gonna regulate on bathrooms. He's not woke. They're cheerleading for him. Why? Because he's kind of a white right-wing hero to them.
I mean, you have to be a very special person to unironically get your news coverage from the Young Turks. I mean, just look at the Chiron. GOP's Putin love. Right wing professes love for Putin as he invades Ukraine. Professes love. In what universe is anybody seeing that? The way these people just twist and manipulate things, you know, it's the same thing we saw from Justin Trudeau. It's the same constant demonizing. Take one thing out of context, expand it into this massive narrative about right-wingers. Tucker Carlson merely questioned, why am I supposed to hate Vladimir Putin just because the Democrat Party tells me that I must? Also asking the question, why do I need to take a side in a border dispute between Ukraine and Russia? And Tucker Carlson has his opinion. He's entitled to his opinion. We'll get more into that later. But how do you take what Tucker Carlson said? We've all seen the clip. I'm sure you guys understand the context. If you haven't, it's all over Twitter. How do you take what Tucker Carlson said during his segments, and then all of a sudden, I mean the mental gymnastics, go from Tucker Carlson questioning the narrative to Tucker Carlson is a white supremacist fawning over Vladimir Putin because he's a white autocratic leader, and the entire Republican base, well, they're cheerleading for Vladimir Putin because they love him because he's white, and they hate Democrats because we're minorities. It's such a ridiculous leap. But what it really is a continued pattern showing that Democrats are not emotionally mature enough or emotionally stable enough to have basic discussions about complex issues. Everything for them is a political binary. It's either their narrative or you're the enemy. There's this individual on Twitter, Gavin Mario Wax. Not exactly sure who he is, but he makes a very valid point here. I've noticed it is impossible to defend free speech without being accused of supporting the controversial speech in question, or provide sober analysis on foreign policy without being accused of being pro-Putin. Our public square has really regressed intellectually. It's the same thing with everything. You have a different opinion, a controversial opinion, whatever it is, and the mainstream or leftist reaction is always this. Tucker Carlson merely asks the question, why? And the media establishment freaks out and is ready to call him a Russian agent and a traitor almost instantly. Here's another example. Tulsi Gabbard writes, "This war and suffering could have easily been avoided if the Biden admin/NATO had simply acknowledged Russia's legitimate security concerns regarding Ukraine's becoming a member of NATO, which would mean that the US/NATO forces right on Russia's border." And take a look at these establishment shills reacting to her tweet. Fred Wellman writes, "You need to throw your army uniform out, you effing traitor." Rachel Vindman writes, "You are an effing traitor." Matt Zeller writes, "You are a traitor and a coward. Resign your commission and go home to your handlers in Moscow." Nothing but war-mongering reactionary comments. As the Twitter user Gavin Mario Wax stated earlier, it's nearly impossible to provide sober analysis on foreign policy without being accused of being pro-Putin or a traitor. You know, this is a legitimate question. Nigel Farage is an absolutely brilliant man who is usually spot on with his analysis. And take a look at what he had to say over here.
Well, look, I have to say, Putin's gone a long way, further than I hope. I hoped he wouldn't go this far. I kind of understood those eastern provinces being Russian-speaking. Western Ukraine does not want to be with Moscow. We've provoked much of it over the years with our ridiculous geopolitics of expanding the EU and NATO, but we are where we are, and we now need American leadership on NATO to say there is a red line here with Poland and Estonia, and that's very important.
Who's to say that it wasn't a geopolitical failure of the West? You know, Russia has clearly stated and they have warned that if NATO continues to expand eastward through Ukraine to their border, they're going to respond with force. And it seems as though they weren't bluffing. Why aren't we having a conversation about whether or not there is any legitimacy to the fact that Russia might have been provoked into this attack? I'm not saying it justifies it. I'm just saying it might be another foreign policy failure. It might have been a provocation of war instead of a de-escalation. The globalist entity known as NATO might have poked the bear, pun intended. You know, even leftist thought leaders like Noam Chomsky have been warning of the exact same thing.
The idea that Ukraine might join a Western military alliance would be quite unacceptable to any Russian leader. This goes back to 1990. The question that we ought to be asking ourselves is, why did NATO even exist after 1990? We can now ask a question: what was the nature of the propaganda we were fed all those years? I mean, if NATO was there to defend the West from the Russians, why is it now expanding right to the borders of Russia?
You know, I'd like to have a rational dialogue about these concepts right over here. But instead it's nothing but leftists going, "Ree!" or "racist traitor," and establishment media warmongering. You know, maybe Russia's not trying to take over the world. Maybe Russia, as a nation, is defending itself from perceived military threats and doesn't have some diabolical mission to conquer the world or start World War III. You know, kind of like most Americans. Associated Press poll finds that only 20% of Americans think that the US should play a major role in Russia-Ukraine conflict. And you know what? That's what Tucker Carlson was saying. But instead of having a rational dialogue, it's nothing but Tucker Carlson is a traitor, Tucker Carlson is pro-Putin. Cenk Uygur literally saying that Republicans are filleting Vladimir Putin. But no, we're not. What we are doing is questioning the military-industrial complex, questioning this geopolitical disaster, and trying to avert war and avoid American casualties and American blood being spilled over a border dispute thousands of miles away. That to me seems like the adult discussion here. But for some reason it's considered fringe and unpatriotic. Matt Walsh from the Daily Wire makes a very good point. Very quickly you are going to start seeing people with no skin in the game calling for all-out war with Russia. They will be moved by cable news and social media to root for something that will result in the deaths of thousands of Americans, and they will feel morally justified. That, my friends, is the exact trap that I would personally like to avoid. But if we clog our ears and just tell ourselves we're Vladimir Putin bad and enable a path for these warmongers, well then I think we are making a very, very grave mistake, and frankly a mistake that we've made before. What we should do is exactly what Tulsi Gabbard said: legitimately analyze the security concerns that the Russian Federation has, and understand how we can come to a compromise. We should avoid further bloodshed the best that we possibly can. Like Nigel Farage said, draw a new red line, and avoid making geopolitical mistakes that result in this kind of failure, and not buy into the latte liberal establishment shill journalist narrative, tweeting from their MacBook Pro and their underpants that it's time to go to war war for Ukraine's democracy? How many times are we going to fall for the same trap over and over again, expecting different results? Very simply, focus on your own problems, focus on your own border, before you go around trying to fix the world's problems. Make your own damn bed and get your own life together, before you go around trying to start a revolution. I don't know, food for thought, a little bit of devil's advocate at certain points. I've just been struggling over the last couple of days to wrap my head around everything that's going on. There's a lot of Tucker Carlson bad going around even in right-wing circles, but this is essentially where my head's at this point. Let me know if I'm onto something, if I'm completely dead wrong, you're entitled to your opinion. Write it down in the comments below, because of course I will openly admit
I am not the expert on geopolitics.
And I'm just trying to figure this whole thing out like I'm sure a lot of you guys are as well. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.